Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Game Logic from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, one of the co-hosts of the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, back with another episode of the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast. Tonight, this is our 7th annual Game Superlative Awards, part 2. So we went through about 8 categories last night. If you don't know the shtick, then let us quickly give you the spiel. At the end of the year, rather than do Game of the Year awards, which seems kind of old hat, and I think that a lot of other people do, we have chosen over the last 7 years to kind of mix it up and kind of do, if you remember your high school superlatives like most likely to succeed, class clown, most likely to be caught, I don't know, in a raging thunderstorm, categories like that.
Baldest man to grow a really big beard.
I thought you were going somewhere else with that.
No.
I was like, whoa, it's a family show, man. Keep it PG at least.
So we gather and usually split this up into over 2 nights, and so this is our second night. Let me announce at the beginning of the show, just in case you weren't here with us at the end of last year. Over the last couple of years, we have also elected to go on hiatus after we kind of wrap up the year. We no longer do a yearly news wrap-up show anymore, and we go on hiatus rather than kind of continue doing the show when there's nothing really going on in the news cycle. So after this show, we will be taking a break. We will be back on Sunday, the 7th of January, to kick off the next year in gaming. With all of that being said, and without much further ado, let's get to it. Starting off with the next category up. So we ended last night on most likely for a family game night. Tonight, we're starting off the next category with most likely to be mentioned in other media as pop culture. So this was a category that we instantiated the year Fortnite blew up, which I think was 2017. As that game, as kind of in the approach to the end of the year, I started seeing like news coverage, like I saw like a town hit by a tornado, and one of the interview spots was about the kid who continued playing Fortnite as he heard this tornado raging through his town. And I was like, okay, that title has apparently transcended just the gamerdom. And so we kind of added this in to talk about games that do that start becoming kind of a voice piece for mainstream media. And so first up tonight in this category is TaoMaster 99.
All right, so this is I think the first of 2 games here that I've actually doubled up on. I was trying not to do that, but I kind of didn't have a choice because I was trying to keep it within not only stuff that came out this year, but stuff that I actually played. There really wasn't a lot for me on this one and a couple other ones. And I'm also bending the rules a little bit once again with what this game is. So Roblox is the game of choice this time. So I mean, they're always bringing out new games, into that service, I guess you could say, because it's not really a game itself. But I see it as being something that's been growing a lot over the last few years. And I went into and I could see it kind of hitting that, maybe not so much like Minecraft, popularity, but it's getting up there. I've seen toys now in the stores of not only just they're kind of just generic Roblox characters, but they actually have one of the specific games that was released on there. One I've talked about, the Pet Simulator. They actually have toys of those now, just those figures in there, all the different pets you can get in there. So I thought that was kind of interesting that, not only do you have Roblox, kind of like the generic, characters, but now they're actually going deeper and going into these actual games that are getting popular within the Roblox system. So that's my choice for this year.
All right, next up we have DBQ.
So last year, I think it was Swiss who had Wordle as his game of choice for this category. I am staying on that New York Times Express and selecting Connections. So Connections is a word association game. You get a series of I don't know, like 15 different words, and you've got 3 or 4 different categories that you need to or you're not given the categories. Sometimes you're given some clues, and then you need to group things in there. So this was one that sitting around extended family get-togethers over the course of the year, that as they were comparing who got connections and how soon they got them, and it took the place of it, added onto their kind of regular Wordle habits as well. So that's why I chose connections.
So with the two of you having gone, I don't mind doing a mid co-host reveal here, because if anyone was going to pick it, it would have been one of the two of you. Neither of you discussed Marvel Snap while you were at home over the Thanksgiving holiday?
Not this year. No. Last year, definitely, probably. But that's more of like I sneak the game in all the time. Right. This is Marvel Snap was one that we played, that Tao and I played a lot of toward the end of last year. I think both of us kind of fell off of it early in 2023. I reinstalled it over the course during the anniversary back in October, and played it very heavily for a good 2 months. Never talked about it on the show because it hasn't drastically changed. But it just finished up the Marvels season, started a new one with the Hellfire Club, and I was able to to delete it off my device, Tao. So no, there is no Marvel Snap in this category at this point.
Did you ever try playing on PC?
No, I never did.
No, okay. I was just wondering. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like nothing different, but I was just wondering.
And so the reason I asked that question is, I guess I had this impression that Marvel Snap was kind of creeping out beyond the edges of gamer, that it was kind of a title that sat squarely kind of in between like the uber geekdom of hardcore gamers, as well as, casuals who weren't even, console gamers or PC gamers, but had experienced it as a mobile app, and that they'd kind of found some common ground. But I guess it sounds like that was not the case. Maybe a drop off in zeitgeist this
I don't
year.
know. Maybe I'll say, I think connections, in part that I work in a library, that no surprise that people who work in a library like word games. So it ended up being the water cooler aspect there in some degree as well.
Alrighty. Next up in the co-host rundown is Vela.
I also repeated this a little bit. I had Legends Tears of the Kingdom because I was riding in the car with the kids and it came across the radio, and the kids were like, "What? Like, they didn't do that?" And so everybody got really excited. And it's funny to listen to news podcasters that don't game, that they're trying to explain it and everything, and it's like, "Oh wait, but that was like right before it came out." So the kids were like super psyched that it was coming, and it was like it came in the mail the next day, I think. So it was pretty cool that was the topic of choice on the radio, I guess.
Very cool, very cool. You also jogged my memory that I'm missing my shipment of Titan Quest for the Nintendo Switch from Amazon. I had forgotten that in the preps for the show, but you mentioning Zelda shipping to you and arriving in your mailbox reminded me, so I need to get on that after the show. Swiss, you were next in the rundown.
Sometimes I feel like I have a good handle on it on this topic, and then sometimes I struggle to pick something. So I kind of took the lazy route and I chose Five Nights at Freddy's because they released the movie, so it escaped like gaming media and into another form of media. I don't think the movie did particularly well, but
I think it did. I mean,
it did.
Given its budget, it did well. Yeah.
Okay. And I was able to kind of get it into the categories because they released it on the Switch this year. So technically there is a version that is new in 2023. So
yeah, I mean, I think correlate with your comment, DBQ, that I think at least the opening weekend it went gangbusters, and that I know movies have been experiencing kind of sharp drop offs. I think I just saw the quick byline that Godzilla -1's drop off was something like 8% in its second week, and that was like the smallest drop off between movie opening weekend and week 2 this year. So I think Five Nights at Freddy's had its moment in the sun. It's super interesting because I would agree that title transcended gamerdom, but it's also funny that lots of people that I talked to who saw it or were aware of the movie were not aware of its origins as a video game. So it's because it's at least for my kids, it's been like a popular zeitgeist topic, but it's not like heavily grounded in the fact that that it comes from it. So it doesn't have like the gaming attachment that like Gran Turismo or when a Mortal Kombat movie releases or something like that.
So those people haven't walked through like a toy aisle at a retail department store, right? Like right alongside the Minecraft toys and the Roblox toys are for the past couple of years, there's been plenty of Five Nights at Freddy's toys in there as well.
I've had preschoolers bring them in, and I'm like, "What is this toy? Like, what? It looks kind of scary." But yeah, I work at a preschool, and they had the Five Nights at Freddy's toys. I'm like, ah!
The clothing too is always it's always right there too. So it's kind of weird.
Well, it's an interesting thing, DBQ. The way you bring that up, and I don't know how like where everyone else's kids are in terms of like culture and modernity and kind of how things are going here in the 21st century, but my kids don't spend a lot of time walking down toy aisles.
Right? Like, I think that's a very good point, right?
Going to the store and like hanging
the
out.
Shopping is done on Amazon, right? You're not kind of wandering through the toy aisle. Yeah. The idea of getting dropped off at KB while your parents wander around the rest of the mall does not exist. So
very true, very true. So my pick in this category, again, most likely to be mentioned in other media as pop culture, was Starfield. There were, multiple mentions of Starfield in kind of mainstream media, being this big, super huge release and kind of really driving a lot of consumer spending, as, very near the kickoff of the holiday season. There was, of course, I would call it the now infamous interview on Bloomberg Technology, which, also was a clip that was shown on mainstream media news outlets where Todd Howard said that you might need to upgrade your PC, which was patently untrue, but there we are. So, but yeah, I think Starfield is a game that has, caught fire in a couple news circuits. As like I said, something significant and associated with Microsoft, as Microsoft has also been in the news, due to the Activision acquisition. So I think that was a major title release that just kind of came on the heels of it and kind of was so big and so popular, and like I said, was seen as kind of driving so much of the resurgence of their business that it kind of broke ground outside of the gaming circles. Next category is most likely to be game of the year in most media outlets. So I want to reiterate as we go into this category, the requirement which all the co-hosts abided by this year was to make their picks. Everyone made their picks for the entirety of this list before the TGAs aired on Thursday, December 7th. So these are our picks before that first one. And now, to expand further, the point of this category and the definition behind it is that it's not just wrapped around the TGAs, but as I've tried to constantly get the word out when people gripe about the TGAs, like there are to be aware that there are other award shows that even though Jeff Keighley's gets a lot of attention and a lot of heat, they're not by any means the sole source of awards. There's the Golden Joysticks, which actually is the longest running game awards show going right now. It's been going for about 42 years. There's the Dice Awards that I think are in like February, and that is an award show that is voted on by industry professionals who actually work in game development. And not
usually, Dice is right around GDC, right? So it's March. Yeah,
I think it precedes it. I think, but I could be wrong. There are I think there are separate awards that are GDC as well. And then there's one other, and then there's the BAFTAs, which are kind of organized a little bit more, kind of like the Oscars, where there's like a standing. I mean, they are backed by an Academy of Arts and Entertainment. It's a standing body that that actually gets has elected members as part of it, who are they don't just detach from those proceedings throughout the year, and then are kind of a loose ragtag group that gets selected to vote kind of 1 month out of the year, but they're ingrained in that whole process year round. So this category is about what are our predictions of, across all of those shows, the title that is going to tend to show up most frequently and garner the most GOTY awards from all of the various game awards. So first in the queue for this category is DBQ.
So this is one that we talked about last night, and it is one that both GameSpot and the Game Awards picked, right? So this is Baldur's Gate 3. I think it is both well-deserved and also completely understandable that it hits that kind of industry kind of bar related to Game of the Year.
Yep, and Otacon and Kakairos are in the chat watching along, so we appreciate you guys for coming through. Swiss, you are next up.
I also chose Baldur's Gate 3. Just knowing how the hype leading up to the game, and then when it hit, it exceeded. It met or exceeded everybody's expectations. So it's understandable that I think a lot of media outlets would be choosing it for Game of the Year in a pretty loaded year, actually, of gaming.
And that's a very good point, because what I was going to mention is, at this point, I'm sure the other co-hosts, well, maybe not the other co-hosts, but one might think listening or watching this, because of course the other co-hosts don't know what everyone else's picks are except for me. One might think that this would have been a clean sweep, and that all of the co-hosts would have voted for the same game. They, however, did not. In fact, it may be a little. In years past, we have typically had like at least one category that's been a clean sweep, but I don't believe we had any categories that were a clean sweep this year. And so next in the rundown to prove that point is Tao.
Yeah, so I went back and forth between Baldur's Gate and Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, which is my choice. And it just came down to personal choice, like which one would I rather play, and that would have been Zelda, just because Baldur's Gate is turn-based combat, which I can't really get into, so Zelda won out on this one.
Okay, and next in the rundown is Vela.
TaoMaster, you are a genius, because I chose that as well. I'm a Zelda homer, and I was ready for it. I was a little concerned that the storyline was going to be a little bit more like Breath of the Wild, and it would get kind of boring, but absolutely blown away. It was amazing. To have similar characters, but totally kind of different story going on, and it makes me laugh every time. I'm like, this is an awesome game, and I think it should have won more. That's what I walked away with.
So one reason a piece. I'm going to go around and ask, what reason do you think is going to be the cause for why it plays out across all of these award shows, as to why the game you picked will be the one picked more frequently than the other? So Tao, your pick was Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. What's like your one main reason that you think that game is going to wind up being Game of the Year over Baldur's Gate 3?
I just up until Baldur's Gate came out, I heard everybody was Zelda Tears of the Kingdom was going to be Game of the Year, just because of the mechanics in the game. Though everybody thought, oh, it's just going to be a rehash of Breath of the Wild. Maybe they'll just put a couple things in here or there, but it was more than that, and everybody, from what I saw across all media, was saying that. So that's why I thought it still might be top pick, but I think too, Baldur's Gate might slip in there, just because maybe some people will be like, well, Zelda's been around for a while. he's always get, they always get, their awards. So maybe we'll just give it to Baldur's Gate this year. And obviously there's more to that too than just, that thinking, but I think that kind of plays into it a little bit also. And sometimes in these awards when they go through.
And Swiss, how about you? Your pick being was Baldur's Gate 3.
It was Baldur's Gate 3, but I mean, I'm like Tao. Like out of the two, I'd prefer to play Zelda. Sometimes with, I guess I have a little bit of a more cynicism when it comes to like looking at what the award people would choose. So like, I feel like just from a Baldur's Gate's just like a more mature like title, and I think you combine that with just the sprawling nature of like the narrative, like so those would be kind of like combined. I would say like they would give the edge to Baldur's Gate versus a sequel to Breath of the Wild, and that's kind of how I felt on between the two and for my prediction.
So DBQ, I'm going to change the question up a bit for you. I want to hear with specific regards to DICE, that being, like I said, voted on by industry professionals. And one of the interesting data points that I've always picked out of that is, for instance, Resident Evil 2 was another remake that made it into the nominations for the Game Awards. There was, there was less angst about it then than when Resident Evil 4 got picked, but I had started asking the question back then, what was the likelihood that remakes would really compete for Game of the Year? And I had always picked up that it didn't at DICE, and I had always felt that was an indicator that amongst people who were developers, that they would say, yeah, a game that got a partial head start like doesn't break even, right, with a from the ground up, entirely new game. But what are your thoughts as to why Baldur's Gate 3 will win out at DICE over Legend of Zelda?
So at DICE, I think is an interesting piece, right? Because both of those two games have a franchise and foundation to build on. There's nothing necessarily drastically new about either one of them. What Larian has done is not super unique to what they've done elsewhere within titles. It is also maybe the first time that it's broken through to the mainstream in the way that it has, where previous Larian titles like Pillars of Eternity and a couple others, right?
Like Divinity series,
yep.
And particularly Divinity Original Sin 2.
There we go. That's the one I was thinking of. So I think that from a developer point, the point that you made last night, GameLogic, in terms of the depth of kind of narrative choices and potential characterizations and the systems running in the background, from a designer piece, I could see making that is a pretty compelling argument. I think from a designer perspective, you could make that same argument with the number of kind of sandbox systems that Tears of the Kingdom throws at you and how breaking it is part of the game design. So, I mean, I could see that where those two really could have some interesting conversations from a development standpoint of, are you looking at creating a structured experience that is at a depth level that is unique, or is it about the physics and the systems as a developer and being able to play around in that sandbox?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays at DICE, because I don't think a lot of people played Larian Studios games before, and even people in the gaming media. So I think in that manner, Baldur's Gate 3 kind of sneaks by because people don't recognize how much of it is built upon, right, what they've done before. Down to the point where, and again, I think it's a great game. And I had actually predicted that it would be the game of the year for the TGAs. However, right, like I said, I comment and I recognize how much of it they've done before, and now they're doing it with a lot of polish and with the Dungeons and Dragons license. Down to the point, one of the most telling aspects is the introductory section of that game is literally the introduction of Divinity Original Sin 2. Like, in both games, and I don't think I'm spoiling anything, but like in both games, you start on a ship, you wake up as a prisoner, and you wind up on a beachhead after the ship is almost drumbeat for drumbeat, the same as the opening of Divinity Original Sin 2. So, which is fine. Like again, small independent studio, never hasn't had a lot of time, on the horizon. So that type of thing is fine. But I don't think a lot of people recognize that and then don't detract for it. Whereas at DICE, I don't think that goes unnoticed, right? Those people are going to know. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of approach it.
So GameLogIQ, you took us through this great thought process and kind of discussion around these, but where do you land on all of this?
What's my pick for this category?
Yeah.
I will answer that. I do want to ask Vela the same question, just to get her comment on why do you think Zelda's going to win out over Baldur's Gate 3 at all these other award shows? One major reason.
I think it's more the game is more like user friendly. So I guess the open world program and everything, like everybody can play it. My 4-year-old plays it, and my high schoolers play it. Everybody is just, the title's there, and they can all follow along the story, and it's just more. I guess more people can play it. Like you were saying that your daughter was interested in it even, and she hadn't been a gamer before. Like people that I know that are not gamers, like will pick up a copy of Zelda and like, yeah, this is awesome, and then get seriously hooked to it. So I think it's just more than a platform like the, what are they called? Not the role playing games, but the action, the turn based game. Like you have to wait for your turn. Yeah, the turn based games. It's just, yeah, you can do what you want kind of without having to wait.
Yeah, quite honestly, I thought that was going to trip Baldur's Gate up at the TGAs a little bit. I even though, like I said, my prediction was that it would be Baldur's Gate 3, but I was like, if something was going to knock it off the pedestal, it was going to be the fact that, there are going to be a lot of people who, just like I kind of saw, console gamers got super excited about Diablo 4 coming to console and then quickly realized that they didn't really know what Diablo was and decided that they didn't like it as much as they were hyping it up. And I thought the same thing about Baldur's Gate 3, that, I feel like Legends of Zelda is a much more approachable title, in that, it kind of takes a certain kind of person to grok with Baldur's Gate 3, and that type of person, in my mind, is not like the mainstream gamer. And that brings me around to what my pick was, which was Marvel's Spider-Man 2. And of course, we have yet to see how this plays out. Unfortunately, I think what we saw in the approach to and the walk away from the TGAs is that the media is I don't want to say tired of Spider-Man 2, but they're over, like they enjoy it as a great game, but they don't necessarily think of it as innovative and mold breaking in terms of the nods that they gave to Larian and Alan Wake and other games. And that's going to could wind up kind of tackling it at the shoestrings in these other award shows. But the main reason I played it was the reason why I say I think Legend of Zelda might, if Legend of Zelda wins out over Baldur's Gate 3 at these other award shows, it's because it's more approachable, and that's how I feel about Marvel Spider-Man 2. Marvel Spider-Man 2 is like the ultimate definition of a game that you come home, kick your tennis shoes off, kick your socked feet right up on the table, put the controller in your hand, lean back, and play the game. But it also has tons of those moments. I think I mentioned it on the show that, cause you to lean forward, elbows on knees, and get really intense, right, about the combat that's going on, because the combat does, the combat, follows an oscillating wave. Like you're beating up a goon, that's not very difficult. You drop down on some hunters, you're in for a fight. Even you drop down on like the fire cultist people, those aren't easy things to walk away from either. But, I thought that, Marvel Spider-Man 2 in a lot of ways is kind of what I call a throat lozenge game. It's very approachable and it kind of goes down easy. Not in terms of it's not challenging, but that it's understandable. It's a common, AAA blockbuster, summer blockbuster movie kind of plot that has its ins and outs, but like nobody's going to get like Baldur's Gate 3. While it's a great game, one of the things Brap and I talk about constantly is I'm like, there's tons of stuff that's not explained to you, not as badly in the Starfield way, but in terms of like you get like 30 bajillion tiles at the bottom of your screen in the UI. Half of those are spells. and like there's like you literally have to go to the equivalent of the old Magic user's guide, right, to figure out what their spells are. Like you may as well have a D&D, spell compendium, right beside you. Because just after kind of experimenting and feeling like I was going to get a handle on the spells just by trial and error, I was like, nope, time out. I'm not. I need a guide to tell me, is this a thing that you cast on yourself? Is this a thing that you cast on your other party? Is this an area of effect thing? So those things just don't leap out at you in the mouse tooltips and some of the other tutorials and dialogues that come up. So, to me, Marvel Spider-Man is kind of the game, like Vela was saying, that to me, even more so than Legends of Zelda, is a thing that's approachable and that everyone can play. And I thought that would make it catch fire with more of the Game Awards that we have to come throughout the year, but we will see. Next category, the hidden gem most overlooked game. First in the rundown on this one is Swiss.
So my pick for this is Cocoon, and it picked up an award at the TGAs, and like GameLogic said, we did this before. We locked our picks in before that, so I'm kind of a little bit concerned that it's not so hidden and it's not so overlooked at this point. But we'll just say, like, I saw it like on a Nintendo Direct, and then I didn't see that much hype about it, like, ongoing, because it's a very niche puzzle title. But it was like that sci-fi setting was super cool, and the puzzles were challenging, but not so challenging as to where I was like getting frustrated. There was a couple of times when like I put the Switch away, and then when I came back to it, it's like I had a different perspective on it, and I got through the puzzle pretty quickly. The about the only knock on it is, and the game is also very they keep introducing new kind of twists on the puzzles. Like you're using the orbs the whole time, but like they keep changing it up. So for the duration of the game, it's pretty cool. The only knock on it would be that it's kind of short. Like I beat it in under 6 hours. So it's not a full price game, but for if you like puzzles and you like kind of cool sci-fi just ambiance, it's definitely worth picking up.
Very cool. And Vela.
I also picked Cocoon. I was sugar plum fairies. Swiss got it, and I was like, well, I'll just see what where this goes. And I was playing it on the Switch, and I was like, wait a second, this is really cool. Like it was the puzzles were interesting, and he's beaten it. I have not yet. I have been drowning in homework, so he's he's a little ahead of me on that one. But no, I've enjoyed Cocoon a lot, and like he said, I was like, oh, it's maybe not as hidden as I thought it was. Like that's
Very cool. And third band in the shoot is DBQ.
Okay, so I love this category because I've always loved what everybody else comes up with, because sometimes they really are things that I've never considered. And for me, oftentimes looking back over the last couple of years with this, it usually ends up being a platformer. That there are so many of those sitting out there that are done by indies that just kind of fly under the radar sometimes. This year was definitely the case of it. So this is a game that I've only picked up recently, but never knew it existed until only a few weeks ago. This is Bang on Balls Chronicles, which is a crazy name, but it is a Poland ball type of game. This is the Exit Plan studio. They are small studio, maybe under 24 people, but the founders are from People Can Fly and from CD Projekt Red. This is I described it to my kids as the Blob mixed with Rabbids mixed with Mario 64. Right. It is the movement of the blob. You are a ball that's moving around. You've got kind of a air dash and a double jump, and you've got a butt stomp, and you're jumping in and out of TVs that bring you to different worlds. What I didn't realize, this game came out on consoles in October, toward the end of October, reviewed really high. I did not realize that this game was announced and went into early access on Steam back in 2001 or 2021. So it's been kind of in development, and the Chronicles piece of it is kind of where that early development comes from. Is that over the last 2 years, the developers have been putting out different levels. So there's a Viking level and a space level, and so the kind of thematic of it is that you're in a movie studio and you're moving in between different sets. And every time as I've been playing it, like every time that I think, oh, this must be I must be getting close to the end of this level, or that I must have exhausted and explored every piece of this corner of this level, and then I break through the floor, and suddenly there's a huge other space down here with multiple other passages, and just there's so much content that for a small game that is $25 on console, there's just a whole lot there, and it almost came into my funniest game, just the kind of playing it with a big smile on my face. And so it's not like it's overly humorous, but it is lighthearted and fun, and just a really enjoyable 3D platformer.
Okay, and next up in the queue is Tao.
All right, so my choice for this was actually kind of surprised me even. So it's actually a VR game. It's a Quest game, Quest 2 and 3. You can play it on both. That came out this past year. It's Dungeons of Eternity, and this was I had mentioned it a few months ago. Kind of like a dungeon roguelite-ish kind of a game where and there's also a little bit of a sci-fi slash mixed into it. It's you're just battling through a dungeon. You got the normal like skeletons and spiders and all the insects, all these kind of enemies and stuff. But and this comes up actually in 2 more of my categories here coming up. But it was just like a fun title that I had a really fun time with going through these dungeons, and the physics were just like spot on. I went back to some of my older, a couple other kind of physics based like sword ish games, and those just felt like just so kind of slow and clunky. And those ones were a little bit more maybe supposed to be like realistic, and this is art style's a little cartoony, kind of almost cell shaded kind of a look to it. But the physics I always thought were spot on. So I mean, this was just really fun time that I had with this game these past few months, and just totally this year.
Very cool. So a VR title makes it onto the boards. For me, my pick for this category, again, the Hidden Gem Most Overlooked Game, was The Outer World Spacer's Choice Edition. So it turns out I picked off quite a number of kind of bundles or re-releases this year. I talked last night, about Shadow Warrior 3. Getting that after the kind of the definitive edition package, and here we kind of have the same thing, a re-release of Outer Worlds, packed in with all of the DLC, as well as the graphical updates for the current generation of hardware. So I hadn't played the Outer Worlds before. I think, in hindsight now, looking backwards from 2023 backwards, people are much more so thinking about what Obsidian is doing next, rather than kind of what this thing was, kind of on the landscape of the gaming industry. And so it doesn't get as much kind of as many accolades as which was the fall. Did they do New Vegas? That was their follow-up. Doesn't get as many accolades and sit in people's memories like Fallout New Vegas did, and I think that's just because because lots more people played that game than the Outer Worlds, and so the Outer Worlds definitely had its time in the sun and was definitely mentioned, but not as much. I don't, because Fallout was a follow up to a Bethesda original game, and that's where you kind of get a large part of the dialogue of how arguably Bethesda or Obsidian is a better studio than Bethesda, or at least does puts out versions of the RPGs that people like more than the Bethesda IP that they're based on. But the Switch Choice is a really nice package. Plays really well. I don't think a lot of these kind of re-releases and bundles and things that came out this year got a lot of airtime because of all the other stuff that was coming out. So, Shadow Warrior 3 didn't get a lot of airtime. Outer Worlds didn't get a lot of airtime. Even Metroid Prime Remastered, which released very early, kind of got buried right in the onslaught of games that came later throughout the year. So this was my hidden gem and an overlooked game. So I was glad I picked it up. Before we go on to the next category, I do want to take a quick stroll through memory lane, and I picked one superlative show at random to look back at, and this was the 5th annual Gaming Superlative Show, which we did, I think in January 2022, which was actually for the gaming year that was 2021, and in this category, the Hidden Gem Most Overlooked Game, DBQ's pick was Demon Turf. Does it ring any bells?
Yes, it does. That was good. Again, another 3D platformer. Yep. Indie developed 3D platformer.
Tao picked Reiji and Ancient Epic.
Oh, okay, yeah. That was Indian centric game, yeah.
Okay.
Kind of isometric platformer game. Yeah, I remember that. I pick it up every once in a while. Yep.
Okay. Swiss's pick, and I remember this being mentioned, was eBaseball Pro Yakiyu Spirits 2021 Grand Slam. And I know you always get on me about getting the Japanese pronunciation wrong. So if you
I won't. I was about to, but then you said that, so I won't. Yeah, I did. We did. I remember that. And it's still I still have that itch to play that game now. I mean, I haven't gotten around to it. That could be most likely to regret not playing in 2023 is baseball, for Yaku Spirits. So yeah, that's Konami's Japanese Pro League baseball title.
So GameLogIQ, if you allow me, let's stay back in the time travel machine here and do our 2020 hidden gems, overlooked games as well. So for TaoMaster, it was Descenders, the dirt bike game. GameLogIQ, you had the 9 edition of your most disappointing game experience, WRC 9 World Rally Champ. Swiss, you had Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and I had Bug Fables, the Paper Mario like game.
Wait, so this was Hidden Gem for 2020.
This was Hidden Gem for 2020. Yes.
Okay, and you said my pick was WRC 9.
Yes.
And you said, what were you saying? I lost what you were. You saying that was I had picked another game in that series for a different category?
So, last night you picked WRC as your most disappointing game experience, correct?
Oh, yes, but huge difference. So that WRC.
Please fill us in those that are not knowledgeable in the rally racing world.
So I talked a little bit last night about how, and I've talked a few times this year about how this year is the big handover of the WRC license. And so that WRC 9 was done by Katon Racing, which had been doing the series for quite some time while they've had that license, which was really a big boon for them because they're really a small independent studio. But this year, with Codemasters having been purchased by EA, I'm certain EA uses financial muscle to wiggle that license away from Katon, just like they've grabbed every other professional sports license. And so this year's WRC was done by Codemasters, which is why I'm so disappointed by it, because I'm like, here's Katon Racing, who's a little ragtag outfit, who's been able to do a really good job, right, with that IP. And then here we have it done by, like I said, the studio who I would have held up as like the best racing studio, today, and they weren't able to pull it off. So yeah. And then my pick back on the other year for 2021 for Hidden Gem was Death Stranding Director's Cut. So moving on to the next category after our quick walk down memory lane, most likely to regret trading or not playing in 2023. Vela, you are first up in this category.
Fire Emblem Engaged. It looks like an awesome game. I've watched other people play it, and I'm like, hey, I would like to, have a go at that one. But it's kind of hard to get the TV. Like the Switch is so easy at our house. Like pull out and you can kind of go into a corner and play it. But like to get the TV around here is just, it's a little, it's a bridge too far sometimes to play a game. But I definitely like to circle and try that one. It looked pretty epic.
And you're saying is that because as a turn-based strategy game, that's a game you feel like you need like up on a big screen and doesn't really lend itself as well to handheld?
I think so. Yeah, I was watching my daughter play it. And I was like, oh, it actually made me want to like jump in there. So I was like, maybe I could do it on the handheld. Like it's just hard to get the Switch. Yeah, we're talking about getting another what is the new one? The
OLED.
Yeah. We're like, do we get a mom and dad Switch and like have a kid Switch? Like, is that something we should do? We don't know yet. We're trying to figure that one out because the kids are definitely and then they leave it uncharged. So you're like, wait a second, where's that Switch? And it's constantly, where are the Joy-Cons? You guys, come on! Like that's.
I've had to in recent years. I finally bit the bullet and started putting tiles on various electronics that my kids lose and misplace, like my remote controls and stuff. So, and now that you have Apple tags and Samsung tags and whatnot, that may be a thing to investigate. I feel the same way as you. Again, I talked about Metroid Prime Remastered, and Fire Emblem Engage was also, I think it was actually the first major release of this year, like in the second week and a half of January. And it's a title that just, kind of goes out of people's memories. And I've looped back to it and played it kind of in, sometime recently, like in the last quarter. And yeah, super enjoyable. I think even on this show, we gave it a drubbing for not being what Fire Emblem Three Houses was. But over time, I've come to find that it has its own.
I would say that we gave it a drubbing. I'd
Yeah,
say that
and not all of us
we
either.
acknowledged that the game's press gives it a drubbing because it does not go down the Persona kind of story beats, but strategically, it's a stronger game.
Yeah, I can see that. Tao, you are next up in this category.
Yeah, so I believe I picked the first game in this series here, which is Spider-Man 2 last year. Well, Spider-Man 1 last year. It came out on PC, but Spider-Man 2 for this year because I don't have a PlayStation and it wasn't released on PC yet. So hopefully, in the not too distant future, that'll come to PC and I can play that since I don't have any PlayStations in my house right now.
Yep, definitely understandable. Swiss, your pick.
I picked Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon just because it's Japanese giant robots and I like geek out over that. Like,
And From Software.
Yeah. I still enjoy thinking back to like the Gundam Wing SNES game. So like anytime like there's Zone of the Enders, like I loved that genre. So yeah, and the style of being able to like I understand it has like quick missions that you go through and as you fight through. So that's appealing to me as my gaming time dwindles. But it was just as soon as they announced it, it was like on my radar, and then I never got around to picking it up, and it's like, so yeah, that's the one I regret not getting into this year.
All right, and DBQ?
I've got mine sitting in a drawer that I picked up over the summer for like $22 on a sale, but For someone who spent a lot of time in the mobile version of Octopath Traveler last year, I haven't played Octopath Traveler 2 at all. And so I think that this is one where, as a kind of traditional JRPG, certainly is in my wheelhouse, just never got around to playing it in the busy year that it was.
And my pick in this category was Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, which I bought when it released on PC. And just strangely enough, it has just never come up in the rotation. And I was interested in playing it. I think the primary interest that drove me was just, an opportunity to play, a PlayStation game that, was received well and had good, critical acclaim, and and I didn't play it on console. And so, I had played an earlier release of Ratchet and Clank DBQ. I think you said that there was a Ratchet and Clank that released at the beginning of the generation that had gotten some next gen cleanup. I forget which version that was.
Oh yeah, well, the Ratchet and Clank kind of no name that launched with the movie back on PlayStation 4 did get a kind of a 4K 60 frames pass early in this generation.
Yeah, so I'd played a little bit of that in PlayStation Plus, and then had that had piqued my interest to try it out on PC, but I just have not managed to get around to it, and that is a regret of mine. Next category, Life of the Party Most Fun Game. So the thing that I'll preface these last two categories with is, so like I said last night, we have this ethos that says, we don't really want to do Game of the Year. However, this is the category that we have that is the closest to it, and sometimes winds up equating to the co-hosts, what they would have called their Game of the Year. Sometimes it is not, and that is also interesting. So again, this category, Life of the Party, Most Fun Game. Tao starts us off.
Yeah, so I will this is where I double up again in this once again Dungeons of Eternity. Like I mentioned, had tons of fun with this game. Playing it, I think when I originally got it, I think I played it for like 2 months straight. So I was it's gameplay is fun. Beating up the enemies, and the physics are great. So it was just a fun time. I had a blast playing this game.
Yeah, and a little more exposition on the title, right? So it's Most Fun Game, thing that you had the most fun playing. The Life of the Party piece of it is also kind of a nod towards the description of this category as, if there were a game that you could play where, like, if somebody walked in the room, right, it would be like the most interesting thing, or if you were to live stream it or something, like there would be tons of people who would be interested in you playing the game. Is the kind of the Life of the Party mentioned. So DBQ, you were next in the rundown.
This one is...
I'm sorry. I should have asked Tao. Tao, with this being your most fun game, is it what you would have considered your Game of the Year?
Surprisingly, yeah. I mean, really, just playing. Even when I was playing with randoms, which I mean, I do that a lot with shooters and stuff, and usually I just mute them. But even in this game, and a lot of VR games too, I always were paired up with like really nice and cool people. Like it wasn't just some screaming kid or just some jerks and stuff like that. It was actually really decent people that would if they're higher level than me, they'd actually help me out, and if I had questions, they'd help me out. So it was really cool community going into it also.
Okay, and this is a game that's on the MetaQuest 3, right?
Yeah, just MetaQuest right now.
Okay, and I'm sorry, DQ, your
that's
pick.
okay. That's okay. And I will say that yes, this would be my Game of the Year as well. Just to answer your previous question, and for anybody who has been listening on and off, if you were here for my over exuberant October show where we were talking about two of the games that I was incredibly excited for, which had both released in the third week of October. If you've been around for the last few years and 2020, 2018, my most fun game has been, no surprise, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Right? The original made it on that list. The Miles Morales made it on that list. It is just as you said in your kind of discussion of it being within a consideration of game of the year. It certainly fits that bill. It is accessible. It is digestible. It catches on to kind of the mass media culture of Spider-Man, especially in the year of Across the Spider-Verse. But it's also just fun. It is always just fun to swing around a city, right? To the transversal that is added in this game with the wingsuit and the kind of flair that you can do as you're swinging around. The collecting of even just swinging around, putting on a different costume and swinging around. Because I remember that one issue of Web of Spider-Man 100, when the only time the armored Spider-Man ever existed, right? Like you can go back in that area and just enjoy it for the IP kind of fandom that it gives you the chance to kind of play around in that New York City skybox. So Spider-Man 2.
Very cool. Next up is Vela.
I doubled up on this one again too. We love WarioWare. Like we've been, that's just one that's like it's quick, it's easy, and if like a group of people, like it never fails. Like you start playing it, and literally everybody comes in and like, oh, I want to go. Like, can I do that one? Um, so I think it's a big. I don't know if I call it my game of the year though. Is that like it's just it is a lot of fun, but Zelda is probably because I'm such a homer. I'm a homer for it. Then it's just so nostalgic. I guess is the word. So I love WarioWare. I think it's a fun game. Like I think I picked it for the family game night. Definitely. So it's definitely just an enjoyable game. But game of the year, like it's not a Zelda. It's not like up there in those ranks of like, or Baldur's Gate. Like oh, these are the games I really want to play, or these are the games that I want to invest a lot of time in. It's just a quick pick me up.
And sometimes we have that split, right? And that's, part of what drives that is the labeling of this category, right? Life of the party, most fun game. Sometimes it is the thing that makes a game the life of the party for a lot of us is the social aspect of it, right? And I'm sure I'll go back and dig through, and I'm sure I've picked, I know I picked Destiny 2 one year, and part of that was because of the social aspect, because it was me playing, with my friends, playing with you guys. But then, if I would have had to pick a game of the year, right, I would have picked something that, more so leaned into like, critical acclaim or, or elements of game design that hooked me as a single player experience. So, yep, that's why this category is always interesting to find out, people have picked a game that was life of the party, most fun game, but that is not necessarily their game of the year. Swiss, your pick.
I picked the same game for Life of the Party. So WarioWare, and pretty much for the same reason. It's just as far as just like just exuberant joy type games, and where everybody's having a good time. It's hard to beat. There are times too where like I go into a game. I think one year I did pick like Mario Odyssey for this kind of thing. So like I can see it both ways. This year, just like the whole WarioWare, just how quick and fun it is something where it's like I really leaned into the life of the party aspect of the category more than anything. But so I picked WarioWare, move it.
I can definitely see that. And would it have been your game of the year?
No.
What would that pick have been?
Probably Zelda is probably where I'm leaning towards with that one.
Okay. My pick in this category, although DBQ has been on the Insomniac thread the whole way through, I was not, and I didn't play the first Spider-Man. I did play Miles Morales when it came, when it showed up on PlayStation 5. And then of course played those, and then I really fell in love with them when I played them on PC.
Yeah, Miles was this category winner last year for PC.
Yep. And so I was there day one for Spider-Man 2, and love it. Look, I know that there's a big, narrative going around about, how, PlayStation games are, they're like playing movies and they have quick time events and, people don't think they have as complex game mechanics and whatever. And I guess my feeling on that is, there are different games to suit different needs in different pockets. And just because they emphasize one element of game design over another doesn't make it a bad game. And then when you consider a collection of works across a portfolio, isolating down on like what one game does or whatever just doesn't kind of make a ton of sense to me. Because I would say, for instance, The Last of Us Part 2, I would hold in higher critical acclaim for its storytelling, and in some ways its game mechanics. But did I like my time in The Last of Us Part 2? This crew knows very well that I did not. So, but Marvel Spider-Man 2, like I said, is, man, if there's a game that I want to come home on a Friday night and just like crunch down in my comfy gamer's chair, and not have a care in the world and, drink, some flavor of my favorite beverage, it would be Marvel Spider-Man 2. I love just grinding for suits and gadgets and not even worried about like the mainline campaign. And then, when you think about the potential of DLC and expanding the story, and all of us, on here, in some manner, in some past life, but definitely, DBQ and Tao and I mean, we're comic book guys. We've been into the MCU. So this is, and the last piece of it, I think that I'll mention is, America doesn't really, as a cultural society, doesn't really have mythology. And comic books and comic book characters are very much the closest thing to that. Now that we're past the time of, Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox. I mean, there was that kind of folklore, but, like I said, comic books is kind of the closest thing that we have to mythology. And
those are real people. You can't tell me there wasn't a giant blue ox running around here.
It came across my windshield today that the world's largest cow has been discovered, and I was like, man, let's find the world's tallest man and paint that cow blue. But yeah, just tons of fun with Marvel Spider-Man 2. Can't wait for it to come to PC. Can't wait to see, expansions of it. And I just keep, having fun, diving into it, beating up thugs. It's a great time. Our final category for the night is most likely to still be playing in 2024. And so this one's interesting in three vectors, because it's always interesting because people tend to not pick the same game that they picked for the last category, and you would tend to think that the game that's the life of the party or the most fun game might be something that you continue to want to play into 2024. But lots of times, in most cases, life of the party, most fun game is a game that we've played a lot of, and we don't, we may be playing it in 2024, but it may not be, something that we're hyper focused on. Like, I missed this game, I didn't play enough. By the same token, it's often not the same game that people picked for the category before that, most likely to regret trading or not playing in 2023. By the way, that category is not playing in 2023 because we originally came up with it when a good chunk of things were still physical. And so, you could trade games in, which, is less of a thing now. So,
GameLogIQ, before we get started here, do we want to review and look back at last year's picks here for what we thought we'd be playing in 2023?
Yes, I would like to also hear from each co-host whether or not they actually did spend time playing that game in 2023.
Okay, well, let's start with you then, because yours was F122, MLB The Show, or NBA 2K.
Man, no. I did the same thing that I did every year. I bought, particularly with MLB The Show, I bought the next iteration of it. And I haven't been back to my MLB The Show 2022 season. The NBA 2K definitely, because I think I wrote that because I have historically not played that franchise a lot, but it had come to Game Pass, And so I was like, oh, well, now I can have access to this thing. And I thought that would kind of light a spark. It didn't. And was NHL the other one?
F1.
So it was F1. Oh,
MLB
MLB
The
the
Show.
Show in 2K. So I talked about MLB the Show in 2K. F1, I did spend a chunk of time in it in the first half of the year. I did invest in another wheel and pedal set. So now I have a wheel and pedal set for Xbox and one for PlayStation. And I have spent more time playing wheel and pedals this year. Now that there's been some additional refinements by Thrustmaster, and I did spend some time playing some more F1 22, but again, it was quickly superseded by F1 23. And although I will go back and revisit those titles, that tends to be just momentary. It's not like I really go back and like spend a ton of time in my in the career mode on those. So,
all right,
my own promise was a failure, I will admit.
Swiss, I think yours might be a little more of something that you followed through on. God of War Ragnarok.
Yeah, I mean, I was playing it probably just the other day. Yeah, it's kind of one of the some of my older kids like watching me go through that and the story, and it's just a great time slaughtering monsters with my axe. I think
perfect game to watch with your kids. It's excellent. Right up there with the approachability of WarioWare and
that's true.
Massive blood from a giant axe that comes back to you.
I think we talked about that, like why and you guys you guys being Marvel fans, like why hasn't there been like a really great Thor game? Because we know the mechanic is so awesome due to the new God of War stuff, but that is one that I rightly predicted I would be playing significant time in, and I did.
All right, Vela, I'm sorry, but I do not have one for you. So, Tao, can you guess what yours was? Because we've talked about it on the show tonight.
Tonight, huh?
Marvel Snap.
Oh, Marvel Snap. Yeah. I mean, I did for the first like few months, and then like we talked about earlier, then I kind of dropped off of it. I think before like spring or summer. But yeah, I do get that itch every once in a while to install it again, but I just scratch it myself and just get it and go on about my day. I was like, maybe one day I'll probably start playing again, but not right now.
There we go. Okay, and mine was, I was actually kind of realistic in mine, that Madden and NBA 2K. Madden I played in online franchises from January to I guess probably September, October. So definitely kept that going as well. So GameLogIQ, this is our final category. So I'll turn the mic back over to you.
Yeah, just so I can turn it back over to one of you guys. And that individual will be Tao, starting us off on this category.
All right, yeah. So I did two. It's going to be Starfield and Dungeons of Eternity that I'll still be playing. I need to get back to Starfield a little bit more than I have been last couple months. So, and then Dungeons of Eternity, they actually released a roadmap for what they're going to do. I think it was last month at some point. So there's supposed to be a fairly decent update this month, and then the kind of stuff that they're going to do next year, with even actually includes some kind of story mode of some kind, because there's a little bit of story at the very beginning, and then there's pretty much nothing after that. Not even really any lore that you can find that I've ever seen in the game itself. So that would be kind of nice if they do have a campaign that you can actually go through. So those are my two choices for next year.
Okay, and at this point, before I go to the next person, I will inform the crew. Very interestingly enough, in this category, no co-host picked any multiplayer game. No co-host picked any game as a service. No co-host picked any type of sports game. So next up is Vela.
I'm lame. I picked Zelda again, but I haven't beat it yet. So I'm like, okay, well, that's going to be, I'm close. So it's going to be, but now, so talking to you guys, I'm thinking like, I should have picked up Spider-Man. Like that should have been like it's always been a on our wish list of things to get, and I'm not sure if Santa made it this year with that. No, I was like, now I feel like we messed up somewhere. Like we should have gotten that. Swiss has been saying, hey, let's pick up Spider-Man. I think it's gonna be pretty good. And now I'm like, we definitely should have. We definitely should have tried that one.
That sounds like the justification that you need there, Swiss.
Yeah, that
Now
was
you've got approval.
I love when the spouses are negotiating and getting sneak peeks at their Christmas gifts on the show. DBQ, you were next.
Okay, so you're right. I didn't pick a sports game. I thought like in past I've either picked sports games or I've picked racing games, and Forza Motorsports is not where I'm going with this. I think realistically, the game that I will come back to on and off the most in 2023 is Disney's Speedstorm, the kart racing free-to-play game loft game, which is super solid in terms of its mechanics, right? We talked about it on the show here in terms of there's some free-to-play monstrosities in there in terms of kind of some paywalls and some friction points. But the actual gameplay itself is still just a lot of fun. I just jumped back in for the Frozen season this past week, and it's fun. It's still enjoyable. I've also come to terms with the fact that I don't have to do everything, so I can play a little bit and experience some of the new characters and then jump out and come back the next season.
Very cool. Very cool. I am next in the rundown. What I will definitely be spending time playing next year will be Baldur's Gate 3. So, I'm just not one to sit on a game for 30 hours in one sitting. I'm definitely not going to sit on a game for 100+ hours in one sitting. But I grew up with Dungeons and Dragons. I did play all of the old BioWare and Obsidian Dungeons and Dragons games. So I played Baldur's Gate 2. I actually, with a buddy of mine, played through Icewind Dale. I had played through it by myself once. I played through with him in co-op in LAN mode on our gaming laptops, and did the same thing for Icewind Dale 2. So we lived in the same town, but in different neighborhoods, and for a span of like 4 to 6 months or so, I used to go over there like every Wednesday night, and we would pound through Icewind Dale and Icewind Dale 2. So I'm definitely gonna be continuing to pick at Baldur's Gate 3. I've definitely got my interest in it as a long-term tale, that I wanna come back to, and I find the combat and the geometry of the battlefield and all of the kind of tactical things that it toggles, in many of the same ways as Fire Emblem Engage. And I think we talked earlier this year about how, if you go back to, last December, starting with Marvel's Midnight Suns, there's just really been a bumper crop of turn-based strategy and tactics games that are really impressive because we haven't seen that many things in that volume, in that genre across the industry for the years preceding. But in that vein, I will hand the baton off to Swiss, who may very well corroborate my feelings on that topic.
Yes, that's what you call a segue. My pick is Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp. And just because I love little strategy games like that especially that emphasize tactics. I feel like most of the time it's like when GameLogic like mentions a game on the show, then I'll just follow and get it. So like Panzer Corps 2 is a really good example of that. But this one has been on my radar for a really long time, and I'm gonna say like this is a little bit of a cheat because I haven't actually started it because of a snafu with GameStop's customer service, where I have just, but when it finally gets resolved, I definitely anticipate putting a lot of time into that next year. So oddly enough, my sister-in-law, who is not a gamer, like she's as casual can be, randomly got hooked on it because my nephews had it, and so it just kind of made me even more excited because it's like accessible for a strategy title. It's accessible both for tactics and to somebody who's like super casual when it comes to anything Nintendo related. But
it is surprisingly more difficult and complex than the art style leads you to believe. There are lots of different units, lots of varied capabilities and limitations amongst those units. Geography definitely plays into it. There are lots of choke points. There are lots of limitations on where units can traverse and where they can't, and impacts that limit their speed when they have to traverse across a certain type of terrain. So yeah, I mean, I want to get back to play some more of this title too. I've gotten into it a couple times this year, but I'm right there with you. And in fact, amongst all of the co-hosts, I mean, 4 out of the 5 of 4 games in this category picks are things that I plan on spending more time. I plan on getting back to Starfield some more. I originally had, quite honestly, 0 interest in Tears of the Kingdom, but I do want to actually get at it and pick at it a little bit. And I'll be going back to Advance Wars 1+2 as well. That rounds us out for the 2023 7th Annual Gaming Superlative Show. As I mentioned earlier, we will now be going on hiatus for a couple of weeks, enjoying the holidays, not stressing ourselves out trying to pull off a show when there's not a lot of news going on. Although, of course, in years past where we did do the show, we would always say, oh, nothing's going to happen. And then, of course, typically Bobby Kotick would, slip on a banana peel, or Blizzard would, do something. I think over the holiday season was the year they went after locking down people on esports for speaking out about humanitarian things or whatever. So yeah, but whatever it is, it'll be low enough volume that I'm sure we'll be able to catch up to it in January if we need to. Anybody else have anything that they want to mention before we get out of here for tonight? For the year, I should say.
Again, always good. Thank you for it's great to have these. It's good to look back and to have the conversation. So thanks.
Yeah, I just want to say, looking back at my games when I was, preparing for the show, it was like those first 2, maybe 2.5 months, and then the last 2.5 months, was my majority of my new game gameplay, and then that middle section was just I totally went back to mostly older games. So I was just kind of interested to see that trend there on how my gameplay was for the past year.
Yeah, I want to say, I feel like, because I was thinking about kind of the same thing the other weekend. I feel like for me, there were some big games that came out in the beginning of the year, and then I kind of dropped off and went to games as a service and sports games and stuff. And then in the summer, with Diablo 4, and then MLB The Show coming out, that pitched up again into how busy it was new game wise. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of new stuff, a lot of good stuff out this year. But there were definitely hills and valleys and dips. A lot of stuff came out at the same time too. So it'll be interesting to see how 2024 goes. We now know that we'll be getting Hellblade next year. We know that Towerborn is coming out on Xbox. I don't think we know much of anything that's coming out on PlayStation next year. We, of course, have Star Wars Outlaws coming next year, which we hope will be a pretty big title. But as always, I'm sure there will be tons of stuff to look forward to. For anybody for those people who came through the live stream and were in the chat, we appreciate you. Thanks a lot, Otacon Ocelot. Thanks a lot, Kakairos. And thanks a lot, Paul, for swinging through. We appreciate you. For anybody who happens to come by and watch the archive version of this live stream on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, we appreciate you as well. Please feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can just receive a notification whenever we post new content. As I mentioned, we'll be on hiatus until Sunday, the 7th of January. On behalf of my co-host SwissGuard, TaoMaster, JetForce Vela, DBQhams, once again, my name has been GameLogIQ from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube. that's going to pretty much be a wrap on 2023. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Play the games that you like. Come here to talk to us about the games that you love. We look forward to seeing you guys next year. Until then, good night, good luck, and good gaming. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here.